Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about all the things that I got up to throughout the month of May, and there was quite a bit. So we're going to start things off with sort of memories and things that happened and the goings on throughout the month. And I'll leave timestamps in case you want to just jump ahead into the tarot stuff, because I know that is probably why most of you all are here. However, I do have my planner here so that I can check and make sure that I'm covering all the things that I want to talk about in terms of what's been going on in May. Because without my planner, I would forget. What was with my hair today? It's like super 80s. Okay, so anyway, one thing that I would not be forgetting anytime soon is that in the first weekend of May, Lisa and Peggy came down to visit, and that was so much fun. We got to hang out, we got to make a few videos for you all, and we got to just, you know, like play with tarot decks and talk and eat and have fun and all the good stuff. It's such a treat to get to be able to hang out with them. The last time we hung out was like almost a year ago or over a year ago at the Northwest Tarot Symposium, which was a lot of fun, but like it was really hectic and really busy. So it was really fun to be able to just kind of get together and just hang out for the weekend and not have to like try to run around and do 500 things. Although we still did 500 things, because if y'all know Lisa and I, that is just kind of how we roll. So we made some videos for you all. If you watched the video over on Lisa's channel, you got to meet my husband, Kevin, who was such an amazing good sport about the whole thing. He drove us around all the places that we wanted to go. He was such a sport in making videos with us and just in general hanging out, because he's not into tarot. This is not like his space. His community is the motorcycle community, and that's where he hangs out. So it was really, really nice of him to come and hang out, and like he was a trooper. He was a trooper through the whole thing. So also like the cutest Uber driver ever. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, so the visit with Lisa and Peggy was definitely the highlight of my May, and just getting to spend the weekend together was fantastic. The following weekend was actually Mother's Day and my birthday. My birthday was on Saturday, Mother's Day was on Sunday, and so I got to kind of hang out and do some stuff for the weekend. Kevin took me to the Science Museum here because they had a big orca exhibit, and it actually opened on my birthday, so I was really, really excited about that. And then, of course, he took me to Powell's, which is this massive bookstore in Portland, which is one of my favorite places to go. And again, such a trooper, as I was like spending forever looking at every single tarot title on the shelf, as well as every single tarot deck in the cabinet. He's always such a good sport with that kind of stuff. So that was that weekend. I got some beautiful birthday gifts and beautiful Mother's Day gifts for my children, all of which I shared in a video with my members. The other thing that I did in May is like I'm back on Instagram, and like I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. I kind of hate being on it, but I love the visual nature of it. I love being able to see all the beautiful pictures. I try to follow a lot of people who do like stuff with their cards or share little bits of their practice. But when I, like at the height of sort of my Instagram time, my account started getting cloned all the time. I started getting lots of spam, lots of, you know, the people cloning my account were sending out DMs in my name. And it's just like, if you know me, I don't read tarot professionally. So not only am I never going to solicit services through a DM because ew, I also like am never going to offer readings because that's just not a service that I offer. So anyway, it got to the point there for a while where it was like, it was a daily thing that I was dealing with, and I was just like, I'm done. So I, like privated my Instagram account and hid it and everything. That was a year or two ago. And I was like, okay, let me try it again, because like I get asked a lot about, you know, are you on Instagram? Can we connect there? So I basically wiped my entire Instagram account. I deleted all of the things that I had posted over the last few years. There was like thousands of posts. I deleted them all. And I started fresh with a sort of like setting new intention for this space and hoping that the second time around that it goes a little bit better and that there's not like a ton of backlash, isn't really the right word, but struggle with trying to keep it like authentic in terms of like being cloned and people sending DMs in my name and stuff like that. If you ever have a question, if it's me, if you ever have a question, like just send me a message and I will double check and let you know. But most of the time it's probably not going to be me because like I'm not real big on I'm being active and on Instagram yet. I do try to post several times a week just to share my practice. I love that aspect of it. I do that in a lot of my Facebook groups as well. But I really like the idea of being able to just share and scroll through all the beautiful pictures of people sharing their practice and stuff like that. The ads get a little annoying from time to time, so I don't know how much patience I'm going to have with it in the long term, but I'm there now. It's kind of a slow roll back into it, and as long as it doesn't become like something that is a complete time suck for me to deal with the admin side of things of being on that platform, then I'm happy to stay there. Anyway, so that's the big thing. I have some new projects in the works. I have a new old book that's coming out in print. It should be hopefully available right around the first part of June on Amazon. It's in final proofs now, so we'll see how that all goes. It is the Connecting with the Tarot, formerly my Tarot Bound. It has been revised, expanded, and hopefully this will be the final version, but I love it being in print because the way that I work with it is sometimes to follow the practice that I have laid out in there, which is basically my own practice for how I study a deck or get to know a new deck and things like that. But sometimes I also just like to kind of like open it up and just pick something, and that's what I work with. So I like having it in the printed format. I had a printed copy of my PDF, but that was kind of like, you had to stick it in a binder or find some way to bind it, and it was just a pain. So like now it's in book form, and it's been professionally edited by a very dear friend of mine, and I am super excited about that. So hopefully that will be coming soon. I will definitely post a note here in my community tab and probably in my Facebook group because I know there's a lot of people who've been waiting for it. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to finally get that project finished, but we're there. We're there. It's in the final steps. So hopefully that will be available very soon. And I think that's it. That's it for May. It was a really fun month, but it was a really busy month that went by really, really quickly for me. I cannot believe that we're like here in June now, basically. This year is just flying by, and I feel like every year that I get older, it goes just even faster, right? Do you remember when you were a kid and like summer would take forever to get here? Now it's like the days, the months, the years, they just fly by. So anyway, okay, enough babble. Let's jump on over to my tarot table and talk about all of the decks that I worked with throughout the month of May, and there were a lot of them, so you might want to grab yourself a beverage. And we'll also take a quick peek at my tarot journal. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the decks that I worked with this month. And most of that was decks that I worked with in the monthly medicine. So every week, as always, we had a theme, and I chose decks that were in alignment with each of the themes. Our overall theme for May was Once Upon a Time, so fairy tales. And so I really leaned into that fairy tale energy. I also read some fairy tale related books, which I'm gonna throw in here as they relate to the weeks that I worked with them. So it's gonna be a little bit of books and decks this time. So the 3 decks that I worked with the first week for Once Upon a Time was the John Bower Tarot, my Heart of Faeries Oracle, and I apologize, this one is out of print, and the Between the Worlds Oracle. These 2 are still currently available mass market decks. These are kind of favorites in my collection, although the Between the Worlds is new, but is quickly becoming a favorite. I adore the John Bower Tarot. This is my second time I've had this deck. I had it, I trimmed it, I decided I wanted it back with the titles, so I rehomed that and purchased another copy. I have edged my deck as I normally do. The Heart of Faeries is a Brian Frow deck, and it is honestly my favorite one. However, I did quite a bit of work with the other Fairy Oracle, which we'll see here in a little bit, and I really enjoyed that as well. So I feel like this was the first month that I really got to bond with that one, but this one I'm pretty well bonded to, and I really enjoy working with. It's just such a great reader for me. It's a little softer than the Fairies Oracle. So the Between the Worlds is a new deck in my collection. I have edged mine, and I showed a couple of these in my recent mod video. This is a Bone and Curio Oracle cards for, it says shadow casting, but I've actually found it to be really appropriate for my work this month with fairy tales, and I've really been enjoying working with it. It's a very kind of simple, almost Lenormand-esque style of a deck, but it just works absolutely beautifully in terms of kind of giving either a focal point or kind of like a key takeaway. It's so funny when I see a card and then I say the word. It works great for kind of like a key takeaway. So what's the kind of main focus of a card or reading or position? So I really enjoyed my work with that. I kind of intermingled it in with these two decks. So I'll do my usual and then I'll kind of show you how I intermingled the Between the Worlds deck as well. So these two decks together, the John Bower and the Heart of Faeries, worked really well for me. I really enjoyed having that fairy as kind of my guiding message. I did use it as a focal point, or it was actually in positional spreads in the monthly medicine work that we do. So there are spreads and I do use my decks accordingly, but a lot of times I also add cards, and that's where the Between the Worlds came in. But the Heart of Faeries for me really served for the most part as kind of that guide or that focal point for the reading. So really it was the guide, right? That's just kind of how these fairies function for me. They're kind of telling me, you know, here's the energy, here's what I need to know. And then the tarot really helps to expand upon that message and that reading altogether. I really enjoy my work with these two. I did work with both of these decks, well, all three of these decks that I have out here currently, all throughout the month actually. So while I did use them very specifically for those Once Upon a Time readings that we did in that first week, I also dipped in and out of these decks all throughout the month because I really love the way that they work together. I really love the sort of storytelling aspect of it. And that Fae brings in a little bit of kind of that magic in this sort of enchanted world of John Bower. So, and then what I would do is kind of intermix this little Between the Worlds oracle. So let me just scoot these up a little bit so you can see how I would maybe add these in. So I would just add a few of these little cards so that I could, you know, get an idea of what was going on within a reading or within a particular position. I also quite often used it as just kind of like a coming into and a leaving the reading. So if I was coming into the reading with the doll's leg, and then I would have another card for exiting the reading with the pen tip here. Now I did have to get into the guidebook for this particular oracle deck because I have no idea what a lot of these things mean in terms of a divinatory aspect. I can read with them very intuitively, which is nice. Like I know what ring means to me. But what I also enjoyed was just getting into the guidebook and then kind of looking at the messages and then relating to what that would mean to me personally. So like doll's arm to me doesn't really mean anything personally. This particular deck is sort of curated items that this particular creator, Monica Badursky, hopefully I said that right. These are items that she has curated. So they have very important significance to her, but I was able to tap into them and use them just fine in my own readings. In fact, I really quite enjoyed working with them. Although when it came to a lot of the bones and the doll parts, I've definitely had to jump into the guidebook. So let me show you that really quickly. So in the Between the Worlds guidebook, we have for each of the cards a little thumbnail of the image. We have what it is. We have a keyword, which I do wish those were on the card. I think that would have made it a little bit more of an approachable oracle. A lot of times when oracles just have a title, that's really limiting for me. I may actually at some point stamp in these keywords because I do really like what keywords they have chosen to incorporate here in this little guidebook. I think they work really well. There's kind of a light and shadow to each of these, which is really cool. Atlas Bone was one that I think I got in that it was either a personal reading or the reading that I did here on my channel. So it's got a really cool little structure. Each of the cards have a little story about them. We have what the item is, so about it, a message, and I found that to be really, really helpful. Then there's also advice, which there is upright, and reversed, and then there's also reflections, so also some great like journaling prompts. You could use these as tarot spreads. It was just a really fantastic, really well thought out guidebook. My only real sort of quibble with this deck is that just having like what it is, like cat bone, doesn't really mean a lot to me. Some of these things I can, you know, work with just fine. Quartz, of course, but it would have been really nice to have those keywords and those phrases on here. I might see if I can sort of like stamp them on or something, or write them on in a way that doesn't, you know, completely ruin the deck. But I feel like that would just be really helpful for me not to have to be completely reliant on the guidebook, although it is a lovely guidebook and I really enjoyed working with it. I did work with this quite a bit throughout the month, so I pulled it into other readings, which you'll see when we get into my journal. So the book I dove into, which is not going to fit here because it's very, very large, throughout that first week was an illustrated treasury of Swedish folk and fairy tales with illustrations by John Bauer. Each of these stories in here are written by different authors. It is an absolutely beautiful collection of Swedish fairy and folk tales. We have tales about the trolls, about the great brave girls and boys, kings and queens, and it's just really wonderful. And you'll see that it's full of beautiful John Bauer artwork, which of course I am not turning to any of the pages. There's one way over there. This card was in one of the readings that I did. So I basically went through the book and found one of the images that related to something that had come up for me in a reading. But truth be told, I dip in and out of this book all the time. If I ever feel like I just want to like have a cozy little sit down with some fairy tales, I absolutely love getting into this book for that. So it's definitely one that I worked with throughout the month, but did use it as a focal point and a jumping off point for further work using my John Bauer within that Once Upon a Time week. Okay, so the next week was Curiouser and Curiouser, and for that I used my Queen Alice Tarot and my Alice the Wonderland Oracle. So these two decks are really fantastic. The Queen Alice is like my Alice the Wonderland Tarot. I absolutely love it. I love the illustrative style of Dame Darcy. There's just something about this deck that just piques my curiosity, it tickles my creative fancy, and I really, really enjoy working with it. So it's definitely one that I like to pull out, and because it has such a special place in my collection for me, I have not purchased any other Alice the Wonderland themed tarot decks. I'm definitely kind of like, this is mine and I'm sticking with it. There are some themes, some decks that I'm just like, I just need the one because it just slots so perfectly in. And if I were to get another one, it would take the place of that. And then there are other times when I need like all of the type of a deck that there is. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just certain decks I'm that way about. And then I worked with the Alice the Wonderland. I really enjoy this Oracle deck. I really like the messages that are on the bottom. The little guidebook is great too. I generally use this actually with a different deck, with my Cosmic Slumber deck. I don't think I've ever paired it with my Alice Tarot before. So this was an interesting pairing. I just couldn't kind of think of anything or come up with a better pairing for the Queen Alice, because I realized that I don't work with this deck with Oracle very often, if at all. This might be the first time I paired these two decks together. It wasn't like the most phenomenal pairing in the world visually, but thematically, I mean, they are all right there. It's got key phrases and things like that on the Oracle deck are really succinct with the whole vibe of the Queen Alice Tarot, of course, because they exist in that same realm. And it was such a treat to get to try these out together. I will have to say it's not like my favorite pairing in terms of aesthetics, but you can't argue with the fact that they exist in the same realm and like they read really well together. The Alice the Wonderland Oracle provides a really wonderful focal point. Again, I use that in that way in a lot of the readings because that's how a lot of spreads are created for the monthly medicine. There's usually some sort of focal point or and or a wrap up at the end of the week. And those often work great for incorporating oracle decks in, and they're kind of designed to do that because that is how I primarily work with my cards. I love to have the oracle deck for the focal point, if not a takeaway message, or I should say, and or a takeaway message, because I've been playing with that quite a bit more these days. So I build that into a lot of the spreads because I know that that is how I work with them, as well as how a lot of people in the membership work with them too. So these two together, again, like visually, not my favorite, but in terms of the messages that we got, or that I got working with this deck, it was really, really great. I think that they worked really well together. So here we have keeping up, immense effort, and advance. And we have the hangman over here in the chariot. So like that's a really good, I think, focal point for those two cards. This idea of like, we're trying to keep up, maybe we can't always keep up, but we're trying, we're advancing, we're going to go ahead and keep working towards that. So I think that that's pretty cool. But yeah, these are two decks that are kind of like, you know, favorites in my collection. Again, I don't usually work with them together, but it was a nice little experiment to try and to see how that went this month. So it will probably be no surprise that the stories I dove into throughout the week of Curiouser and Curiouser was Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. Now, I have read Alice's Adventure in Wonderland several times throughout my life. This time I kind of just would flip through, find one of the little stories, or even just read snippets of stories. And it was really great to just kind of touch back with this book, with this story. It's one of my favorites. It's, you know, one that I grew up with as well, one that I read to my kids. And so it's really fun to kind of touch back in with it and read it again. I think I might have shown this particular book in one of my creative, like I'm going to do something with it things. And I think I said I was going to turn it into a journal. After doing this month, I have decided to keep it as my reading copy because it's so beautiful. I love it. It comes in this gorgeous like slipcover box too. So I'll be getting another book to do that project with, because this one has now become my favorite reading copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. All right, so the next week was Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, and it was our shadow week, and I incorporated quite a few decks into this particular week. I had my Brian Froud Faeries, I had my Rackham Tarot, my Magical Child Oracle, and my Oracle of Oddities. Now these two served as the focal point, so we'll talk about them first. So the two decks that I used as sort of my main decks for that week were the Rackham Tarot, which is actually a new deck in my collection. I have edged mine. This was the first month that I've ever worked with this deck. I bought it specifically to work with throughout this month because I wanted a sort of shadowy fairy tale deck. And to me, that is what this deck feels like. This feels like the true kind of Grimm's version of fairy tales. It's kind of dark, it's shadowy, it's not always pleasant, but it's a really, really good reader. And I really, really enjoyed working with it. It's definitely gonna stay in my collection, definitely gonna stay in that space for me in terms of working with sort of fairy tale and shadow. I have paired it with a few other things, but really the deck that I ended up working with alongside it this month was my Oracle of Oddities. I do apologize because this, again, is another out-of-print deck. It is the first, second, and third all mixed together into one ginormous deck. This is by the same creator as the Antique Anatomy. It is also Memento Mori. I almost pulled that one out because that one is still available, but I just felt like this was really where it was at for this particular work. I love the succinct keywords in the Oracle of Oddities. There's something about it that just kind of sums up everything that's going on in the reading. And I paired that with the Rackham, which was just fantastic for diving deeper into that shadowy aspect, because that was our focus for the Big Bad Wolf, looking at, you know, not only where we encounter the Big Bad Wolf, but where sometimes we become the Big Bad Wolf in other people's story, if not our own. That was definitely an energy we were we're looking at throughout the week. And so it was really great to use these two together. The Rackham pairs with a lot of things that I have in my collection, but there's just something about the Oracle of Oddities that just brings that sort of succinct focus, but also there's a bit of like bringing in some of the groundedness of like reality into the fantasy. And I think it's because like these are flowers. I mean, granted, they're not real flowers. I think a lot of these flowers are just, you know, they're designed flowers. They're created for the deck. They're colored for the deck and things like that. But we do have actual body parts. And so or skeletal parts, I guess I should say. And I just feel like that kind of brings that rooted, grounded, sort of earthy human nature, human energy into the work with the fairy tales. So it feels like kind of a blending of those things, of the fantasy and the reality. And I really enjoyed the way that they work together. There's just something about it that was just really succinct and on point for me. I also ended up including, let me just scoot these all up because this particular week I had quite a bit of fun playing with my decks. I also included Brian Froud's Faeries Oracle. So this is the other one. This one is currently still in print. I have edged mine as well. This is the first month that I've really worked in depth with this deck. I worked with it more than I did the Heart of Faeries because it's one that I haven't done a ton of work with, or really haven't worked with as much as I've worked with the other one. And I really wanted to get a chance to get to know it. And it just worked really beautifully for this sort of big bad wolf shadowy week. And it was a really fantastic addition to my readings. Let me just kind of scoot everything up here. Here, let's do this just so we can make some space because I'm going to pull in yet another deck. I also included my little magical child. This is an indie deck. I have edged mine as well. These two are mass market, again, out of print indie, and this one is indie. And I'm unsure of the current print status of this, but I will leave it linked in the description box for you. This is a beautiful fairy tale inspired collage deck, and I got the Big Bad Wolf card, which was just so perfect. Here it was. You'll see it in my journal, but this was the card that I pulled at the very end of the Big Bad Wolf week, which was just like, and that week was inspired by Little Red Riding Hood, the story of Little Red Riding Hood. So like this was just the most perfect card to pull. I shuffled and drew and that's what came out. I really enjoyed working with these all together. So a lot of times I would use the fairies here as my guide, and then I would look to the oracle and the tarot for those messages, and then pull the magical child as sort of a wrap up to that reading. And the whole experience was just really wonderful working with these decks together. I really enjoyed how they kind of spoke to each other. I liked having kind of specific jobs for things. Let me try to make this a little bit easier, like on me too. And I feel like this is really more how it should go. Because this tends to be, when I work with multiple decks, how I tend to work with them. If I have a deck that is like a guiding energy, I tend to like to put that up top. And then I have the Oracle of Oddities down here for that sort of rooted, grounded energy. You'll see I use this sort of a configuration a lot. I have my tarot over here, my additional oracle. So I've got kind of this whole fairy tale kingdom set up here on my table. So I can look to my Froud's Fairies for my guide, my tarot for that expanded message, the Oracle of Oddities for that groundedness, and then the little magical child for that sort of takeaway. It was just a beautiful experience working with these decks. I really did explore working with more than just the Tarot and Oracle this month. So I really added to a lot of my readings, which was a lot of fun. And it's something that I like to do on occasion when I have the time and when I feel like the practice or the study that I'm engaged in kind of supports it. And I feel like for fairy tales, that worked really well because I was able to bring in all of these different energies. Because if you think about all the stuff that goes into a fairy tale, right? You've got your heroes and your villains and your conflicts and your your themes and your morals and your threads and all of that. Like there's a ton that goes into all of these little pieces to create this one story. And I feel like this did that really beautifully on the table for me. And of course, for my story exploration part of my practice, the book that I got into was the Grimm's Fairy Tales. This is an old vintage copy that my kids got me for Christmas. It is really beautiful. I really need to get like a reading copy, I guess, of Grimm's Fairy Tales, because this is the only collection that I have of them. What is the date here? I can't even remember. I cannot read that many Roman numerals at once. 1945. So this copy was from 1945. So I'm very careful when I read it. It's like when I'm getting into it, it has these like really charming, simple illustrations but because like it's quite old, I do try to be really, really careful. There are a few colored illustrations as well, which is beautiful. There obviously has been some damage to this book because, you know, it's been around for a while. But I really enjoyed dipping into this book again. It's one that I like to kind of just very carefully flip through and pick a story and read. Again, I probably need to get myself like a cheaper reading copy that I can dip in and out of. But I do have the Grimm's Fairy Tale on my Kindle as well. So the next week was The Princess Rescues Herself, and this is where we looked at sort of more modern renditions of fairy tale and how the idea of fairy tale has shifted and changed and how that reflects in our sort of personal stories. And the decks that I use for that are the Tarot de Carlotides, the Modern Nirvana Oracle, and the Into the Mystic Pocket Oracle. These two are both mass market and still available. This is an indie deck, and last time I looked, it was out of print, but I'll definitely leave a link for you. So we'll start with these two just so I can kind of touch bases with my main working decks for the fourth week, The Princess Rescues Herself. The Tarot de Carlotides is like, it's such a fantastic deck. It has got like, first of all, the illustration style is just right up my alley. The color palette is just right up my alley. But it's also got a lot of story and myth and pop culture and all kinds of stuff mixed into this deck, which I felt like just made a perfect deck to use for sort of that modern fairy tale. I went back and forth about, you know, what deck I wanted to use, but this was the one that just really called to me. And I had so much fun with these two decks together. I adore this. I need to edge it, right? This is that Fournier cardstock. I absolutely adore it. The size is a little bit smaller than your typical tarot, so it's like the perfect deck for me in terms of size and cardstock. It's just amazing. And I wasn't sure what to pair it with because like all of my fairy tale stuff felt a little too vintagey. So I just happened to like look through my oracles and be like, well, what do I have that's fairly modern? And I grabbed the Modern Nirvana Oracle, and oh my goodness, this deck with the Tarot de Carlotides just sang to me all week long. It was amazing. I did so many readings with these two decks. I'm going to kind of shorten that stack a little bit. Not only did I do my work for the monthly medicine, but I also just used the heck out of these decks all week long. I'm still continuing to work with them because like I just can't get enough of it. They read so well together. I do love that for the most part, the Modern Nirvana has these really succinct keywords on it. So I don't necessarily need to get into the guidebook, but I usually do because the guidebook is kind of amazing. I think I've talked about it before, but I'll show you real quickly before we move on. These two decks together though, I think I talked about the Modern Nirvana as being like the perfect pairing with the Serpent Fire. I take that back. That's not its mate. Its mate is the Tarot de Carlotides. And I apologize if you can hear my dog snoring because he is just sawing some serious logs over there. But here we have like partnership with the Emperor and the Eight of Cups. There is just something about these two decks together. You know when you get that pairing that just like everything about it just sings. Aesthetically, it's beautiful. The borders are the same color even. The color tones, the color palettes are very similar, very compatible. And beyond that, the way that these decks work together is just so phenomenal. It is like bringing all of that fairy tale energy that we were working with into the modern age, so into today. This was one of my cards that I got. And it just reads so well together. I've just like, clearly I was blown away by it. I'm still blown away by it. I'm still working with these two decks together because they're just kind of amazing. And I'm really enjoying exploring this pairing in a much deeper level. It was really wonderful to use with my monthly medicine, but I have been exploring it even further and using them for a lot of other things. My only thing with the Modern Nirvana is occasionally there are these sigils that I don't quite know much about, but that's what the guidebook is for. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Look at this devil card though. Not awesome. So there's so many cards in this deck that I just absolutely adore. Really wish I had, taken the time to get to know this deck to this extent much sooner, because although I've played with it a little bit here and there, like I didn't quite realize just how well this deck would connect for me and how it would just like speak to me in a language that I understood and just sit right in that spot I needed to. And look at those backs. Are those not amazing? Sorry, I'm gushing. I'm gushing about the tarot deck, but it was just fantastic. This little Modern Nirvana guidebook is quite wonderful. Look at this. It's like flat lay. How cool is that? You have a quote, of course, a picture, which is always nice. The keyword that you see on the card. You have the quote, and then there's sort of this kind of like about the card, kind of talking a little bit about the concept behind the card. And there's usually like a page or two, or a page and 2.5 or so. And then kind of it wraps up a little bit with kind of like, which would be more of the divinatory message. And then there's a mantra. And I really have enjoyed working with those mantras, as well as just reading the overall information that I'm getting in the guidebook when I'm pulling cards. There is just this really wonderful, very inspiring, very, like, it says modern, but like it feels a little bit retro in a sense to me as well. And I've been enjoying learning about the sigils. Sigils are not something that I've worked with a ton. I worked with them, in my younger days during my witchy work that I did back then. But I haven't worked with them since, really. And it's been really cool to explore them through this deck. It's just kind of an amazing deck. It's mass market. It's really affordable. The guidebook is fantastic too. So while I don't have to rely solely on the guidebook, I enjoy when I can get into it and it offers me something even more to my reading. Oh, I forgot to show you, because this was amazing. So let me just get my little Decarlatides back out, because this was fantastic. I ended up using these for my main readings, having a few cards or whatever. I mean, it does have the heart with the 3 swords. It does. But I forgive it. I don't even care. And then what I was pulling into the Mystic Pocket Oracle. This is the teeniest, tiniest little oracle deck. There's only 27 cards. And it is just like, it's a little collage deck, and it is just like the cutest dang thing. And I love the messages on the cards. So a lot of times what I was doing with my readings and my work with these two is I would, do my little reading, and then I would pull, like, I'm completely unsure how to share decks when there's more than 2. I absolutely loved using these as like little punctuations in my readings. So I would do my readings, and then I would pull 1 or 2 of these little cards as like little messages infused into the larger reading. And so that was really fun. And I've kind of been exploring the idea of pocket decks in that way. I definitely want to kind of incorporate that a little bit more into my practice, in using those little decks, those little pocket decks, particularly my little pocket oracles, as ways to kind of punctuate and accent my readings in a sense. So it's like little additional messages that just expand upon or tap further into whatever the work that I'm doing. They work really well for wrap-up messages. They also work really well for, kind of like that, like I said, that coming into the reading and that exiting the reading. We can have these little things here. So it's just really, really cool. And I really enjoyed including this. So here we have like perception with the lovers and let this also teach you. There's just something about the messages in this little deck that is just amazing. Forgiveness with the magician and breathe deeply and let it go. I love that. These decks are decks that I've not put away yet. They're still hanging out with me. I'm still working with them because I'm absolutely loving it. We'll do one more. Transcendence, Six of Swords, and in quiet reflection will the answers come forth. How beautiful is that? So the book that I was reading during the Princess Rescues Herself week was Fierce Fairy Tales by Nikita Gill, Poems and Stories to Stir Your Soul. This is a book of fairy tale inspired poetry, but kind of forewarning, or trigger warning. There are a few things in here that can be a little bit difficult. There are some themes that are addressed in these poems that can be a little bit triggering. So I just want to put that out there. But we have things like The Miller's Daughter, half of Rumpelstiltskin Seeks Redemption, Why Tinkerbell Quit Anger Management, Cinderella's Mother Sends Her a Message from Heaven. It was a really beautiful book of poems and sort of almost like short stories in a sense. There were several that I pulled out to work with. There's one that I copied into my journal, and that was the main one that I was working with for that week. And it was one that just kind of really hit me in the feels. So I did quite a bit of work with it, but I think I've read most everything in here now. It's just a beautiful book of poetry. So on the back it says, await no princes to save you, though their lips touching yours, whilst you are in unwilling slumber, wake each other up instead. So I just felt like that was perfect for the Princess Saves Herself week. Okay, and for our last wrap-up reading, which was the first part of the week, we had Happily Ever After, and for that I used Tarot at the End of the Rainbow. I recently showed this one in a mod too because I have done quite a little mod on it. I took the titles off the bottom, re-rounded the corners with the larger corner rounder, and then I added the numbers in gold Sharpie, which you probably won't even be able to see. I didn't pair this with anything. I just worked with it, and I've been working with it. This is such a fun deck. It is kind of cheeky though, and it likes to throw those more challenging cards in those positive positions when I use it in spreads. It's real fond of doing that, which I kind of adore about this deck. It's so much fun. I know rainbows aren't normally my thing, but I absolutely adore this deck and the rainbows in it. And this is one of those, decks that make me happy, those good mood decks. This is definitely going to be in that category for me, because I absolutely love everything about this deck. There isn't a card I don't like. There isn't an association I don't get. It works. But it definitely is a deck that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I really, really enjoy that. It's also got all the wonderful, sort of fantasy video game kind of vibes for me too, which is something that I totally love. And look, Three of Swords. There is a heart, but there's more going on there. Love that. I'm sorry. I know. I'll quit harping on that one of these days. Anyway, it's just such a fantastic deck. Oh, I edged mine in rainbow colors, and then I overlaid it with a Brilliance gold stamp. And here's what the backs ended up looking like. Yeah, this was a fun one. It's definitely going in my good mood decks bin, where I'm just these are the decks that just completely make me happy. And anytime I'm in a bad mood or just not feeling it, this is one of those decks that I can grab, do a little reading, and I know I will feel better at the end of the day. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of other decks that I worked with just throughout this month. Let's talk about the Tarot of Tales. Now, I did a mod on this deck, of course, and I have worked with it a little bit. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten into the guidebook a ton, and I hear that that's where it's at with this deck. I do love that we have, the big keywords here, and we have sort of what the card means in different sort of positions, which is really cool. So we have in the past, at present, on the horizon, from above, and deep within. And if you did that in a 5-card reading, That's 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 card reading. I do want to explore that a little bit deeper in terms of just working with this deck alongside the guidebook and using those positions. And then whatever card I come up with in those positions, I can go to the guidebook because we have it not only in the majors, but also in the minor arcana as well. So if I got the 4 of Swords in the at present, then it would tell me a little bit about that. So like, I feel like this is really the treasure of this deck, and I really just didn't have a chance to explore it in the way that I really would want to. So I think I'm going to kind of continue working with this deck a little bit just so that I can play with it more in that sense, because I didn't get a chance to really explore those, like the spreads in that way. I did show it in my deck mod video, my recent deck mod video, because I did modify mine. I edged it and I also distressed the back. Now this deck is really cool. There are a couple of cards that kind of trip me up. There is an octopus that is in a 9 of cups, I believe, instead of the 8, which throws me every time I see it. But other than that, like I think that might be the only one. I really love this deck. I got Judgment several times. The thing about this deck that I found, the little bits that I did do in my readings with it, was that it reads really shadow for me. And it reads really shadow in the way the Rackham Oracle reads, or the Rackham Tarot reads, because as I was getting to know the Tarot of Tales, I was realizing that it does kind of sit in that same space as the Rackham Tarot. So I don't know if like long term that means that they're going to compete with each other, and that I'm eventually going to like pick a favorite, because sometimes that does happen when I have decks that really do sit in very similar spots for me. I haven't worked with, well, really probably either one of them enough to be able to say for sure. But I've definitely worked with the Rackham more than I've worked with the Tarot of Tales this month. But look how cool they are together. I mean, they read really well together, really diving into that shadow energy. However, it's also like, I don't mind like tarot and tarot. There are times when I pull tarot and tarot into a reading, but I feel like that is something that I prefer to do when the tarot decks have different energies. And so the thing with the Tarot of Tales and the Rackham is they felt like they had the same energy, so they were sitting in the same space for me, and that they were competing a little bit. So like I said, I really want to spend some time, get into the guidebook, and work with it in that way. Maybe if anybody's interested, I could do like a little read with me. Oh, here it is. 9 of Cups with an octopus. Why? It's an octopus. Why is that not the 8? That throws me. I really don't like it when they include an animal that is so synonymous with a numerical energy and then they put it in the wrong numerical category. That really, really bugs me. Particularly because I read numerically, so it probably bothers me more than it would other people. But other than that, I think this is really a cool deck. But again, like I said, I really haven't worked with it enough to say 100% like what I think about it yet. It reads really shadow for me right now, but I want to explore it along with the guidebook and see how I feel after that. So 2 other decks that I worked with throughout the month was the Midnight Magic and the Mushroom Spirit Oracle. I actually got this to pair with my fairy decks, and then I just ended up kind of playing with these 2 together. So both of these are new decks in my collection as of this month, so I was really exploring them. I did use them both in a reading that I did, a tarot journal with me not too long ago on my channel, and they worked really well for that. I also included the Between the Worlds because I'm just loving that little oracle deck. This Mushroom Tarot is kind of amazing. I think it is so smart. I absolutely love how the creator of this deck, or the artist or artist creator team, has taken the energy of the tarot and reflected it through this mushroom world. Like I love mushrooms. I do. I don't have like a huge like affinity for mushrooms, but I really do enjoy mushrooms from a sort of as a designer, I guess. Like they're a lot of fun to design with. But I really love the way that they have incorporated all the little elements and the world that surrounds the mushroom into this deck. It is really, really smart. It's another deck that I'm probably going to continue to work with because I'm just really enjoying getting to know it. And I just, every time I pull out one of these cards or this deck and I do a reading with it, I'm kind of just blown away by like how succinct it is and how much is in each of these these cards in terms of like what I get from it intuitively. There's like little fairies, there's plant energy, there's obviously the mushroom energy, that's kind of the focus, but there's this whole world that exists within this deck that it just is such an amazing experience to pull that into a reading. I really enjoyed working with it. I'm going to continue my work with it for sure. This is the new Mushroom Spirit Oracle. This one did come edged in this green. It's nice to see Rockpool do some matte instead of the shiny. I much prefer that. The Mushroom or the Midnight Magic I edged myself, so that one didn't come edged. This deck is kind of cool. I really wish the pattern on the background had been like different. Like it's the same pattern over and over again. This repeating pattern, and then we have this one ghost mushroom, which is kind of cool. That's like my only real complaint with this deck is I wish that when they were using backgrounds like this, the background would be different instead of just like copying and pasting the same background every time. But that's the designer in me being nitpicky. This is a beautiful deck. I wasn't really sure because I have another mushroom oracle deck and it's a collage deck and I absolutely adore that one. We're not going to talk about it this month because I did not get into it as much as I wanted to and I'm planning to do that next month. So I'm going to save that for then. So I used this one instead. And this one has such a lovely, charming sort of energy to it. It feels like it just kind of works really well as a beautiful focal point. I used it a lot for kind of like what to ground into. And then I would pull fairies like you saw me do in that one reading. I would pull fairies to give me that message from this sort of magical realm as well. And it was just a beautiful practice working with these. And I do really like them paired together, even though this is like a lot of mushroom energy. I feel like because the mushroom spirit is pretty, like it's a pretty simple oracle in terms of like if there's just the one image of the mushroom and then we've got the title, of course, what it is, and then the keyword. I'm so glad they put keywords on it. It's really hard for me when there's just like a title and there's no keyword. There's nothing for me to really jump into, especially if I don't know what the thing is on the card. So sometimes that can be really limiting. So I really appreciate when they include the title as well, or the keyword as well. But I feel like this worked really well for that kind of central focal point message. It just really gave me that idea of what it is that I'm grounding into. So here we have like introspection between the Six of Wands and the Three of Wands. And it really just did a wonderful job of creating that sort of really grounded deep into the earth sort of an energy, and then allowing me to expand upon my reading and then pull, you know, other decks, other oracles, other tarot into it. I guess not other tarot, just oracles, because I mostly just worked with the Midnight Magic with this. And it was a beautiful practice. I really enjoyed it. Look at this 10 of Cups with a rainbow. I mean, there's just everything about this mushroom deck. It just like checks all the boxes for me. The illustrations are beautiful. The production quality is great. Well, the cardstock is like, it shuffles fine. I really like, I really don't mind it, except for mine, like it came with a bow and I keep like putting it in the box the other way, trying to get it to straighten back out, but it just kind of keeps bowing. Other than that, like it's gorgeous. It's smart. I really enjoyed working with it this month. And I really like the mushroom spirit is that focal point energy. I do intend to pair it with my fairy decks because that's kind of why I purchased it. Was not so much for this whole mushroom extravaganza I have going on the table, but really as a sort of grounding energy to counterbalance the fairy energy. And I have yet to explore that into too much depth, but I'm really looking forward to doing that. The last two decks that I want to share with you today are the two decks that I used for Taurus season in my deck and walk, and that is the Heimdall Tarot and the Divine Nature Oracle. They were the perfect match for Taurus season, and the pairing and the way that they spoke to each other was just phenomenal. So the Heimdall Tarot is... it's an amazing art deck, and the write-ups and guidebooks are written by Rachel Pollack, so it does have a little white book that comes with the deck. It's a wonderful little guidebook. Will definitely get you what you need to know with working with this deck, but there are 2 additional larger books, and I will pull those down here in just a minute and share those with you. Both written by Rachel Pollack, that are amazing. The revised editions are now back in print. This deck is fantastic. There's so much going on in this. I spoke about it in my Taurus deck video, but it really resonates with that sort of grounded, rooted, almost ancestral energy that I feel comes through Taurus for me. And then I paired that with the divine nature, which is funny because this was just, I happened to see it on somebody's video. I'm sorry, I wish I could remember who it was. I need to start writing these things down. And the artwork is really fantastic. And the minute I saw it, it was just like, I think that will go well with the Heindel Tarot. This one did come gold gilded, and it's got a weird shuffly thing going on, which I'll show you here in a moment. But these 2 together, oh my goodness, these together just kind of blew me away. So I worked with them all throughout Taurus season. That divine nature just creates that really wonderful focal point. So we have create between the 10 of stones with richness and the emperor. And I found that together, they just really helped me sort of dive deep into a reading, but also look at it from that surface level, if that makes sense. So kind of like taking the reading on the whole, and then diving deep into the individual layers and symbolism within the Heindel Tarot. This is kind of what I mean. So like the divine nature created that focal point. It was a lot of times sort of what the main foundational energy was, and then I would look to the tarot as I normally do to dive deeper into that. So here we have Hold Your Ground with the Mother of Cups in the north, which is the Queen of Cups, and the Mother of Stones in the west with the Queen of Stones. How cool is that? And here we see this figure holding her ground, not against the dragon, which I love, like with the dragon, which is really cool. A lot of the imagery feels like very grounded and rooted into those really deep layers of self. And it really helps us to kind of bring them out and explore them more in the moment and in the everyday sense of life. So like it's really cool to pull in that sort of take that history, that ancestry from the past, and that sort of collective knowledge that gets shared generation after generation, and then to see it kind of come through in a more everyday modern sense through the divine nature was really cool. So here's the 2 books that I mentioned for the Heindel Tarot. These are the newer revised editions that are now currently available. So we have one for the Major Arcana and one for the Minor Arcana, and these are like, they're written by Rachel Pollack, so you know they just go into mass amount of detail, like in a really digestible way though, which I really appreciate. It's such a treasure. I really want to continue to explore working with this deck and these books even further. So I did mention that this deck has like a little bit of a shuffling issue. I don't know what it is. This is the second deck that I've had by this creator, this publisher, that I've had issues shuffling. It like clumps really bad if you go that way, although it does bridge nicely. But if you turn it this way, for whatever reason, you get a perfect shuffle. So I'm not sure if it's just something weird about my deck or what. The other deck that I had, which I did end up rehoming, and I'm planning on keeping this one instead, had a weird shuffle to it too. So maybe that will eventually work itself out. The guidebook for this Oracle deck is really phenomenal. It has a beautiful introduction, how to use this deck, and then we go right into, I mean, look at these images. These are more aligned with sort of like my aesthetic, the energy that I want to cultivate, rather than the other deck that I had. So I feel like this is a much better fit for me. And again, you just have the real simple key phrases on the card, which are really great and easy to work with, but you can dive in here and there's definitely some little treasures to pull out of this. So you have like surrender to the resistance. Now is the time to let go. Surrender isn't defeat. It's the sacred pause that allows us to use all our senses to receive a new vision. I mean, it's just beautiful. This is a gorgeously written guidebook, gorgeously produced deck overall. It did come with a little like a little organza, I think it was, a little bag. But I took that out because it kept running away on me. But like, I mean, I don't do boxes, y'all know, because I make my own bags. But like, this is a beautiful little boxed set. And again, mass market, so really, really affordable. Really enjoyed my work with it this month. Okay, so now that brings us into just a quick flip through my tarot journal. And I'll flip through my sacred reading journal very quickly because I did show that in a video recently. So let's just take a quick flip through my monthly medicine journal, which is what I have here. This is the cover for our Once Upon a Time, which I always print on vellum and then tip into my journal. I set mine up kind of like a storybook this month. So I have my table of contents. Each week has the theme, and then I just listed the decks and the books and stuff that I worked with throughout. So you'll see here, like I have each one has its own like chapter title page. So chapter 1 was Once Upon a Time. And I did end up like transferring over the little bits that I had written into the monthly medicine guide, along with the images that I had included in there, and I just pasted those in and wrote those into my journal. And then you'll see that it's a very, very heavy in just the writing for the most part, although there was one week that I got pretty creative, creative for this journal. The point of this journal is not so much to be creative. I have another journal for that. This is more about doing the work and, you know, sitting with the readings and working through them all. So then we have the Curiouser and Curiouser, which was chapter 2 or week 2. And then again, you can see that I've got my readings in here. This one I did along with my members in a video. And then we had chapter 3, which was the Big Bad Wolf week. And so we had like what was stalking us. We had a reading for the beginning of the week and a reading for the end of the week. And then we were invited to dive into something related to that theme through the week. So I was working with Faeries and the different books that I showed you when I was talking about the decks that I used. So you'll see some of that incorporated in here too. Then chapter 4 was The Princess Rescues Herself. And this is where I did end up doing a little bit more creative stuff. I did a bunch of doodling, because I was just really inspired by the cards that I worked with and the readings that I got. So I kind of doodled those a bit. This was one of the poems from the Fierce Fairy Tales that I worked with throughout the week, which was great. So I transferred it into here. And then again, had another big reading and a big spread, big reading, and lots that I had to say about that particular one. And then we had our last reading, which was the Happily Ever After. And again, that was the one that I used the tarot at the end of the rainbow. And then they all lived happily ever after, the end. And I'm ready for our June monthly medicine, which is Enchanting Realms, where we will be using our decks to create our own magical realms, which will be lots of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. Real quickly, I'll just do a quick flip through. This is my sacred reading journals. So as I mentioned in that tarot journal with me, not readings that I do like daily. These are readings that are like for specific things, or that they're special, or that they relate to a certain sacred practice that I have. But I did realize that I've been setting them up monthly. So I'll go ahead and start including them, just a quick flip through in my monthly reflections here, because even though I had like done a spring page, wherever that went, like there's a spring page, I'll probably do a summer page when the equinox hits. But I have been making sort of monthly cover pages, because I've been doing a sort of month ahead reading, or an energetic month ahead. It's an energy reading for me, so I've been including those in here. So I'll be as long as I'm doing that, I guess I'll flip through them in this video in my wrap up every month. So I had my readings, and you'll see that I worked with completely different decks for these. And if I went into all the decks that I used throughout a month, like these videos would be 3-4 hours long. So I'll just quickly note the decks, because most of the time these are decks that I have talked about at length on my channel, have either done reviews of, or walkthroughs and things like that. If there's ever anything that you'd like to see me talk about more, or talk about more in depth, just, let me know in the comments below. So my energetic check-in for May, I used the Earth Wisdom Oracle and the Green Witch Tarot. And then I also pulled a Tree Whisper Oracle. These are kind of foundational decks for me, so it's why they get included in here. And I do a lot of doodling in this particular book. and some collaging and things like that. So this was my full moon in Scorpio reading. This was a spread and journal. Well, this was journal prompts from the Rising Woman website, and then I turned it into a spread. And I used my Stars Divine, my Vision of the Muse, and then my Lioness Oracle Tarot. That's generally a new moon deck for me, but for whatever reason, this full moon in Scorpio, with it being the lunar eclipse, I just really felt called to do that. I did some sticker collaging on this particular page. This is my channeled reading, which is something that I've been doing, I think pretty much every month this year, where I've been working on channeling energies for my creative work. And so I've got that in here, and I used my Tarot of the Cat People, the Guiding Light Oracle, which I'll probably talk about more next month because that's a new deck in my collection. And it's my Portal deck, which is not the name of it, Gateway of Light Activation. There is another deck called the Portal Oracle, but that one's the Gateway of Light, even though I call it the Portal Oracle. Anyway, this one I did some, just a little bit of line work and some stickers. Stickers are a great, easy way to incorporate stuff into your journal. This was my birthday spread. So my birthday was on May 13th. So I did a birthday reading. I almost always, well, for the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years, I've used the Llewellyn Tarot, my trimmed one, with the botanical inspirations, oracle, and sometimes other decks mixed in there. But those two tend to be like my birthday decks. I use them most every year. I also incorporated the Oracle of Oddities this time because I felt like they just worked really well. I did this kind of vintagey collage thing. And you'll see I didn't really write a ton, and that's because I feel like I didn't really need to. The cards kind of speak for themselves in this reading, which is fantastic. But I really enjoyed doing that reading. I do it every year. Then we have my new moon in Taurus reading, and I used the Moonchild Tarot. Again, my new and full moon decks were swapped this month for some reason. But I felt like with that new moon in Taurus, I just really wanted that sort of more grounded energy. So I chose the Moonchild, which is normally a full moon deck for me, the Priestess of the Light, and the Magical Herb Oracle. And I pulled those together into my reading. Again, this is just mostly stickers, some line work, and a little bit of washi. This is the last reading that I have in here for the month, and this was the one that I did the tarot journal with me on, and this was my sort of, grounding into the work that I need to be doing moving forward. And I did a whole video on this, so I'll leave that linked for you in the description box below in case you missed it. But for this one, I used that Mushroom Spirit, the Midnight Magic, the Beyond Worlds, and my Brian Froud Fairy. And that's it. So then we'll be moving into June here shortly. So we're not going to play the stack everything on the desk game because I have way too many decks for that. But that is a look at the main stuff that I got up to throughout the month of May. It was a really exciting month. It went by really, really quickly, and I had a lot of stuff going on. So as always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you had a wonderful May, and I wish you many blessings moving into June.